September 20th, 2025. Dear President Trump, I write this evening as I stand before President Lyndon Carter, First Vice President Dr. Faye Jenkins Bello, past Presidents Mel Mason and Raymond Noble, the leaders, the members, our distinguished elected officials, and friends of the Monterey County NAACP branch 1049 Freedom Fund Life Membership Banquet. To inform you, Mr. President, that the executive orders you issued earlier this year to promote an inaccurate and incomplete narrative of the history of the United States does not faze us, nor does it minimize our resolve to control our own narrative about the Black experience over the course of our nation's history. Why are we not fazed? Because your order to restore truth and sanity to American history cannot be accomplished and fulfilled. Because the truth about American history is it is an ugly history, a painful history, one that is deeply rooted in the oppression of Black people, indigenous people, and other communities of color. Where the American experience is that which is filtered through a white superiority lens. There is no glorifying this. Every chapter of American history purportedly to spread democracy and wealth has been asterisked with justifications for the forced removal and destruction of indigenous populations, for the expansion of slavery, and for tearing down the advancements of Black economic centers and Black Wall Streets that thrived after being established out of necessity to foster collective economics and counter segregation and racism. Manifest destiny, economic prosperity, rising global prominence, each a concept rooted in American exceptionalism and white nationalism. And why have you, Mr. President, not minimized our resolve to control our own narrative and place in American history with the true experiences of our communities? Your pursuit of sanity to American history will fail. Because as you seek to erase American history in your dangerous revisionist ways, as you seek to appoint those who will attempt to redefine what American heritage means, as you seek to remove historical data and records, as you seek to eliminate DE&I initiatives, as you seek to make invisible and to erase the historical figures who have given voice to the experiences of slavery, tribal oppression, the discrimination against women, people of color, and LGBTQ+ people, and as you seek to suppress the history and culture of our marginalized communities by defunding educational and cultural institutions. Mr. President, our stories, our histories, our cultures, and our experiences will continue to sustain life. They will continue to live on because they sustain us as our fight for inclusion and acceptance in all ways continue. You see, Mr. President, being made to feel invisible is not a new experience for us. Our histories have never been fully told with full truth and honesty. Our American heritage has not been fully celebrated because it has not been fully understood. I grew up in San Francisco and attended public schools there. The American history I learned inside and outside the classroom was one fraught with contradictions. I learned that the enactment of the Emancipation Proclamation, formerly enslaved people could pursue reuniting with family members who were separated by slavery. They could pursue education, housing, and job opportunities. Yet what many were met with was violence and hostility. Lives far from being defined as free and thriving. In fact, the economic promises to formerly enslaved people as it related to land and work were largely false promises. I learned as a young girl from our neighborhood postal carrier named Morris, whose route included my parents' laundry and dry cleaning business in San Francisco, that the United States Army was the path to economic stability for ensuing generations of formerly enslaved people, as was employment by the United States Postal Service. My own father's path to citizenship was enlisting in the United States Army and serving in active duty during World War II. I learned more about the Black experience in America from Morris through his stories about his family than I had ever learned reading short chapters in school history books. It would be years later in college that I would learn that the 120,000 Japanese Americans who left behind homes and businesses and were detained in internment camps was not the first instance of incarcerating non-white American citizens. 25 years earlier, during the Tulsa Race Massacre, the National Guard confined 6,000 Black residents in internment camps, subjecting them to forced labor to clean up the very destruction caused by the mob attacks of the Tulsa Greenwood district known as Black Wall Street. Mr. President, plain and simple, you cannot and you will not erase us. Because our history, our cultures, our experiences and stories are intertwined. To know another's history is to know ourselves. And to embrace that in each among us is to embrace humanity. You will not destroy our humanity. And as you continue to tear down our democracy, let me remind you who the architects, the perfecters, and protectors of our democracy have been. Black Americans who continue to press our nation to live up to our ideals and to strengthen the institutions that will support this. Black Americans who understand that the fight for civil rights is a fundamental democratic principle, not just for Black Americans, but for all marginalized people.
Right, that's right.
Black Americans who sacrifice their lives defending our country in war, when their country's leaders continue to support discriminatory policies against them. And Black Americans who historians aptly call the moral conscience of our nation, because they remain central to the persistent fights for the rights of all of us. Voting rights, women's rights, immigrant rights, LGBTQ+ rights, disability rights, healthcare rights, and more. Mr. President, this is the history of the United States. We may have had a change in our presidency on January 20th, but we have lived through these difficult chapters of our history before. For many of us, the more things change, the more they stay the same. We understand the fight for lasting freedom is ongoing and hard-fought. We recognize that change on the surface still requires deep systemic changes, and we are buoyed by the collective energy being brought to this fight for our democracy, for our humanity, and for our freedom across all communities. Mr. President, I wish you were here this evening with all of us. Among us here this evening are heroes and champions we've honored because they have been at the forefront of these fights. Among us here this evening, we find comfort and strength in our faith, in our common humanity, and in our commitment to the generations that follow. And ironically, Mr. President, your hell-bent attempts to erase us have created space for our truths to be told and to be amplified and to be accepted. So as we gather in solidarity this evening to carry out the historic work of the NAACP, to attain meaningful and lasting freedom for all, Mr. President, we say to you, we shall overcome, we shall prevail, and we shall taste true freedom at last. Sincerely, Betty Yee, running to be the next governor of California, who will stand alongside all who are here tonight and beyond in the fight for lasting justice, equality, and freedom. Thank you very much.